Welcome back to the channel, Coin Hunters. Today, we are going deep into the exciting world of United States Washington quarter dollar coins. And this time we are looking at 5 examples that can become extremely interesting to collectors because of their date, mint mark, condition, rarity, and auction history. A Washington quarter may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin, but certain dates and varieties can be worth hundreds, thousands, or even far more in exceptional certified grades. Before we begin, remember one very important fact. A coin is not automatically worth thousands of dollars simply because it is old. The exact mint mark, variety, condition, preservation, originality, and authentication can make an enormous difference. Professional grading services such as PCGS show that some Washington quarter issues have auction records reaching into 6 figures, while ordinary circulated examples of the same general type may be worth much less. So, if you have an old Washington quarter sitting in a collection, an inherited coin box, a drawer, or even an old jar, don't dismiss it too quickly. Check the date, look carefully for the mint mark, examine the condition, and compare it with reliable price and auction information. Now let's begin our list with the 1966 Washington quarter, no mint mark, in extra fine condition. At first glance, this quarter may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin, but its history makes it an interesting piece for collectors. The 1966 Washington quarter was produced during a major transition in United States coinage, just after the government moved away from silver quarters and introduced the copper-nickel clad composition. The 1966 quarter contains a copper-nickel outer layer over a copper core rather than the 90% silver composition used on Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier. One of the first things collectors notice about this coin is the absence of a mint mark. But here's the important point. The missing mint mark on a 1966 Washington quarter is completely normal. It is not, by itself, an error. During 1965 through 1967, mint marks were intentionally omitted from U.S. coins as part of a policy designed to discourage coin hoarding during the national coin shortage. Therefore, you should not assume that a 1966 quarter without a mint mark is automatically rare. The 1966 regular Washington quarter had a very large reported mintage of approximately 821.1 million pieces, which means ordinary circulated examples are not considered rare. Numismatic references currently show relatively modest values for normal circulated 1966 quarters. Numista, for example, lists an approximate XF value around 58 cents, while other market guides place ordinary circulated pieces around face value to less than $1, depending on condition. So what does extra fine condition actually mean? An extra fine coin has experienced noticeable circulation, but it still retains considerable detail. On the obverse, Washington's portrait should remain clearly defined, with important features such as the hair and facial details still visible. On the reverse, the eagle and surrounding lettering should remain strong, although some high points will show wear. The surfaces should ideally be free from major scratches, dents, corrosion, or harsh cleaning. For a normal 1966 no mint mark quarter in extra fine condition, we should keep the value realistic. A reasonable market estimate is approximately 50 cents to $1, with the exact amount depending on eye appeal and the buyer. Some references place an XF example around the 50-cent range, while particularly attractive pieces may sell for somewhat more. But here's where the story becomes much more exciting. Although the normal 1966 quarter is common, exceptionally preserved examples and genuine varieties or mint errors can be worth dramatically more. The highest grade regular strike coins have attracted much stronger prices. One recent market reference reports an auction record of $21,000 for an exceptional MS-68 plus 1966 quarter, demonstrating that condition rarity can transform an otherwise common date into a serious collectible. This is an important lesson for every coin hunter. A coin does not have to be rare in mintage to become valuable in an extremely high grade. Hundreds of millions may have been produced, but very few may survive with nearly perfect surfaces after decades of circulation, storage, handling, and environmental exposure. Collectors should also watch carefully for genuine varieties and errors. Some 1966 quarters have been reported with doubled die characteristics and other mint-made errors. However, ordinary scratches, damage, machine doubling, and post-mint marks should not automatically be called errors. Authentication becomes especially important when someone believes a 1966 quarter has a major variety. The special mint set version is another interesting area. In addition to regular circulation strikes, approximately 2.2 million 1966 SMS quarters were produced. These pieces can have a different appearance and may carry collector premiums, especially with exceptional finishes and cameo characteristics. However, an ordinary circulated quarter should not be confused with an SMS specimen. For our coin today, the key identification is simple: 1966 Washington quarter, no mint mark, extra fine condition. The missing mint mark is normal, the coin is clad rather than silver, and the regular issue is common. Therefore, we should not claim that an ordinary XF example is worth thousands or millions of dollars. Its realistic value is generally close to face value, with a modest premium possible depending on condition and market demand. If you discover one, examine the coin carefully before spending it. Look at the date, inspect the reverse lettering, study the mint mark area, examine the edge for its copper-colored core, and look for genuine mint-made abnormalities. Most importantly, never clean the coin. Polishing or chemical cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces and reduce its collector appeal. And remember, coin collecting is not only about finding a coin worth thousands of dollars. Sometimes the real excitement is discovering a piece of American history that survived for decades and understanding exactly what makes it special. So, our first coin, the 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark in extra fine condition, may not be a fortune in its ordinary form, but it is an important coin from the beginning of the clad quarter era, and if an unusual error, variety, or exceptionally high-grade example is discovered, the story can become much more interesting. Keep watching, because our next Washington quarter will bring another date, another mint mark story, and another opportunity to discover what collectors are searching for in today's coin market. Now let's move to our second coin, the 1979 D Washington quarter in very fine condition. This is an interesting coin from the late 1970s, carrying the D mint mark, which tells us that it was struck at the Denver Mint. Unlike the earlier 1966 quarter, where the absence of a mint mark was normal, the 1979 D clearly carries the Denver Mint designation and can be identified by the small d, located on the obverse near the bottom of Washington's neck. The 1979 D Washington quarter is a copper-nickel-clad coin, not a 90% silver quarter. It weighs about 5.67 grams and measures approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter. The Denver Mint produced about 489.8 million examples, so the regular 1979 D is not considered a rare coin simply because of its date and mint mark. However, collectors know that mintage is only one part of the story. Condition can dramatically change the market appeal of a coin. Our example is described as very fine, or VF20, meaning it has clearly circulated but still retains substantial design detail. Washington's portrait should remain recognizable and reasonably sharp, while some of the finer details in the hair and clothing will show noticeable wear. On the reverse, the eagle and lettering should remain well defined, although the highest points will have lost some of their original detail. For an ordinary 1979 D quarter in very fine condition, we need to keep the value realistic. Current price references show that circulated examples generally trade for only a modest premium, often around face value to well under $1, depending on the exact condition and marketplace. CoinWorld, for example, lists the 1979 D-clad quarter at approximately 28 cents in lower circulated grades and about 57 cents around the very fine range, with values increasing as the grade rises. That means a normal 1979 D in very fine condition should not be advertised as a coin automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The real excitement comes from unusually high-grade examples and genuine mint errors or varieties. This is where the 1979 D becomes more interesting. Although hundreds of millions were produced, truly exceptional uncirculated specimens are considerably harder to find than ordinary circulated coins. PCGS currently gives the regular 1979 D a relatively common rarity classification, but its data shows that high-grade examples can still bring significant collector premiums. The auction market provides a fascinating example. PCGS records an auction result of $1,078 for a 1979 D Washington quarter graded MS-67, sold by Great Collections in August 2014. Another certified MS-67 example sold for $441 at Heritage Auctions in 2013. These results demonstrate an important point for our viewers. The $1,078 auction record does not mean that every 1979 D quarter is worth $1,078. That price was achieved by a professionally graded MS-67 example with exceptional preservation. Our very fine example has circulated and therefore belongs to a completely different value category. The difference between very fine and MS-67 can be enormous. A very fine coin has visible circulation wear, while an MS-67 coin is an uncirculated specimen with extremely high-quality surfaces and preservation. This enormous grade difference explains why two coins carrying exactly the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different prices. Collectors should also examine the coin carefully for genuine mint errors. The 1979 Washington Quarter series includes examples with unusual mint-made errors, and some error coins can command much stronger prices than normal examples. For instance, Coin World records auction sales for a 1979 quarter with a missing obverse clad layer, showing how an authentic mint error can create additional collector interest. But be careful here. A scratch, dent, discoloration, or damaged surface is not automatically a mint error. Many unusual-looking coins have been damaged after leaving the mint. If you believe your 1979 D quarter has a major error, compare it with authenticated examples and consider professional evaluation. Another important feature is the D mint mark itself. On a genuine 1979 D, the D identifies Denver production. Collectors should make sure the mint mark appears natural and consistent with the rest of the coin. Do not attempt to enlarge, modify, or alter it. Any tampering can destroy collector value. The 1979 D is also interesting from a historical perspective because it comes from a period when the Washington quarter had already been using the copper-nickel-clad composition for more than a decade. By this point, the familiar silver Washington quarter era had already ended for regular circulation coins. So while the 1979 D does not contain the valuable silver composition found in pre-1965 Washington quarters, it represents an important chapter in modern American coinage. For our 1979 D Washington quarter in very fine condition, a realistic value would generally be around 25 cents to 75 cents, depending on the exact appearance, marketplace, and buyer interest. Exceptional varieties, authenticated mint errors, or dramatically higher grades can be worth much more. Current market references show the biggest premiums occurring in uncirculated grades rather than ordinary circulated VF examples. So if you have a 1979 D quarter in your collection, don't throw it away just because it is a common modern clad quarter. Take a close look. Check the date, confirm the D mint mark, examine both sides for unusual characteristics, and inspect the surfaces carefully. And most importantly, never clean the coin. Cleaning can leave permanent marks and reduce its appeal to collectors. The biggest lesson from this coin is that rarity and condition work together. The 1979 D has a large mintage, so a normal circulated example is not particularly rare. But a superbly preserved example or a genuine mint error can become a much more interesting collectible. So our second coin, the 1979 D Washington quarter in very fine condition, is a great example of why collectors should learn to distinguish an ordinary circulated coin from a truly exceptional specimen. It may not be a fortune in VF condition, but if you discover a rare error, variety, or an unusually high-grade example, the value story can change dramatically. And now, let's move on to the third Washington quarter, where another date, condition, and mint mark combination could bring a completely different collector story and potentially a much more interesting market value. Now let's move to our third coin, the 1967 Washington quarter with no mint mark in good condition. This is a fascinating coin because 1967 was part of a very unusual period in United States coinage. At first glance, you might think that a quarter without a mint mark must have been made at Philadelphia. But the story is more complicated. During 1965 through 1967, The U.S. Mint deliberately removed mint marks from circulating coins to discourage people from hoarding coins during the nationwide coin shortage. As a result, the 1967 Washington quarter normally appears without a mint mark. The 1967 Washington quarter is a copper nickel-clad coin with a pure copper center, weighing approximately 5.67 grams and measuring about 24.3 millimeters across. It was designed by John Flanagan and continues the famous Washington quarter design that collectors immediately recognize. The production numbers are another important part of this coin story. Approximately 1.524 billion 1967 Washington quarters were produced for circulation. PCGS records production from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but because of the temporary mint mark suspension, circulating examples from this period do not carry the normal mint identification. This means that the missing mint mark is not an error. That is one of the most important things for collectors to understand. If you find a 1967 quarter without a mint mark, don't automatically assume that you have discovered a rare mint error. The no mint mark appearance is normal for this issue. Our example is described as being in good condition. In coin grading, good condition means the coin has experienced substantial circulation and wear. Washington's portrait will still be clearly recognizable, but many of the finer details will be worn down. The reverse eagle and lettering should remain identifiable, although considerable wear may be visible across the highest points of the design. Because this particular 1967 quarter is heavily circulated and the regular issue had a very large production, its ordinary collector value is modest. NGC's current guide shows circulated 1967 Washington quarters around 30 cents in the lower circulated grades, with values remaining under $1 through the circulated range. So, for our 1967 no mint mark Washington quarter in good condition, a realistic market estimate would generally be around 25 cents to 50 cents, depending on the coin's appearance and the marketplace. It is important not to confuse this circulated value with the prices achieved by spectacular mint state examples. And this is where our coin becomes much more interesting for a YouTube coin hunting story. Although an ordinary good condition 1967 quarter is not a high dollar rarity, extremely well-preserved 1967 quarters can bring dramatically higher prices. PCGS records an auction result of $8,812.50 for a 1967 Washington quarter graded MS-68, while another MS-68 example sold for $3,960 in 2024. That huge difference demonstrates one of the most important rules of coin collecting. Condition can completely change the value of a coin. A heavily circulated 1967 quarter may be worth only around its face value, while a spectacularly preserved, professionally graded example can become a much more desirable collectible. PCGS currently identifies the regular 1967 issue as a common type overall, but the highest grades are much more difficult to find. The Mint did not produce regular uncirculated coin sets in 1967, and although uncirculated business strikes are not genuinely rare, gem and superb gem examples are considerably more challenging to locate. Collectors should also be aware of the 1967 Special Mint set, commonly called SMS. The U.S. Mint produced approximately 1.86 million SMS sets that year. SMS quarters can have a noticeably different surface appearance from normal circulation strikes, and distinguishing an SMS coin from a regular business strike can be important when determining value. For our good condition coin, however, the situation is much simpler. If it is an ordinary circulated 1967 Washington quarter with no unusual mint error or variety, it should not be advertised as a coin worth thousands of dollars. Its value is normally modest. Nevertheless, collectors should still inspect the coin carefully. Look at Washington's portrait, the date, the lettering, the eagle on the reverse, and especially the overall surfaces. Search for genuine mint-made errors rather than ordinary damage caused by decades of circulation. Be particularly careful with online claims about rare 1967 no mint mark quarters. The absence of a mint mark is expected on this issue. A seller claiming that every 1967 quarter without a mint mark is rare is misleading collectors. The real factors are the coin's condition, variety, error status, SMS designation, and authentication. And, just like with our previous coins, Never clean the quarter. Do not polish it, scrape it, use chemicals on it, or try to make the surface look newer. Cleaning can leave permanent hairlines and other damage, potentially reducing the coin's desirability. The historical importance of the 1967 quarter should also not be overlooked. This coin comes from a fascinating moment when the United States was dealing with a major coin shortage and transitioning completely away from traditional silver circulation coinage. The 1967 quarter is therefore an interesting piece of American monetary history, even when it is not particularly valuable in circulated condition. So, our third coin, the 1967 Washington quarter, no mint mark, in good condition, is realistically a modest value coin, generally around 25 cents to 50 cents in ordinary circulated condition. But if you ever discover a 1967 quarter with exceptional preservation, an authentic mint error, or a rare collectible characteristic, the value can change dramatically. And that's the real excitement of coin hunting. The coin in your hand may look ordinary, but understanding its history, production, condition, and varieties is what separates a casual finder from a serious collector. Keep watching, because our next Washington quarter will bring another date, another condition, and another opportunity to discover what makes these small pieces of American history so fascinating. Now we come to our fourth coin, the 1985 D Washington quarter in very fine condition. This quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on the obverse near Washington's neck. The 1985 D is a copper-nickel-clad Washington quarter with a copper-nickel outer layer surrounding a pure copper center. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams and measures about 24.3 millimeters across. The Denver Mint produced approximately 519,962,888 examples of the 1985 D Washington quarter. Because of this very large mintage, the normal 1985 D is not considered a rare date in circulated condition. However, that does not mean collectors should completely ignore it. The condition, unusual mint errors, varieties, and exceptionally high-grade examples can make certain pieces much more interesting. Our example is described as being in very fine condition, commonly represented around the VF range. This means the coin has clearly circulated, but it still retains a good amount of its original design. Washington's portrait should remain easy to recognize, although the highest points of the hair and facial details will show wear. On the reverse, the eagle and lettering should remain clearly visible, but some of the finer feather details will have disappeared through circulation. For an ordinary 1985 D quarter in very fine condition, the value is generally modest. Current market references put circulated examples around 25 cents to less than $1, with Nemista's current CPG data showing approximately 40 cents for VF20 through VF35. So, if the coin in your hand is a normal circulated 1985 D with no unusual error or variety, a realistic estimate would be approximately 25 cents to 75 cents, depending on its exact appearance and the marketplace. This is an important point for our viewers because the 1985 D should not be presented as a coin automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because it has a D mint mark. But now comes the exciting part. The same date can become dramatically more valuable when the grade reaches the highest levels. PCGS records an auction record of $1,680 for a 1985 D Washington quarter graded MS67, sold in 2013. That auction result does not mean that a very fine 1985 D is worth $1,680. The record belongs to a professionally graded, exceptionally preserved MS67 coin. A circulated VF example has experienced significant wear and therefore belongs to a completely different value category. This huge difference between grades is one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. A coin can have a large mintage and still become valuable in an extremely high grade because very few surviving examples may have the exceptional surfaces, strike quality, luster, and preservation required for the highest grades. Collectors should also examine the 1985 D for genuine mint errors. A dramatic mint-made error can make a common date much more desirable. However, scratches, dents, discoloration, environmental damage, and other post-mint problems are not automatically errors. If you believe your coin has an unusual mint error, it is best to compare it with authenticated examples and seek professional evaluation before assigning a large dollar value. The D mint mark is another feature that collectors should carefully inspect. It confirms Denver production, but the mint mark itself does not make this quarter rare. With more than 500 million 1985 D quarters produced, the ordinary coin remains readily available. There is also another important lesson here. Do not clean the coin. If your 1985 D quarter has dirt, dark coloration, or natural toning, leave it alone. Using chemicals, polishing materials, abrasive products, or even aggressive rubbing can permanently damage the surface. A naturally preserved coin is generally much more desirable to collectors than one that has been harshly cleaned. If you are searching through old change, look at the date first, and then check the mint mark. Once you identify a 1985 D, examine Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle under good lighting. Look for unusual doubling, missing design elements, off-center striking, clipped planchets, wrong planchet characteristics, or other genuine mint-made abnormalities. Remember that a true error should have characteristics consistent with a mistake made during the minting process. For our 1985 D Washington quarter in very fine condition, the realistic value is generally around 25 cents to 75 cents for an ordinary example. Exceptional uncirculated coins can be worth substantially more, and PCGS's documented $1,680 MS-67 auction record shows just how dramatically the market can change at elite grades. So while this particular 1985 D in very fine condition is not normally a high-dollar rarity, it remains a fascinating piece of American coinage history. It represents the modern clad era of the Washington quarter and shows why collectors should always consider the combination of date, mint mark, condition, errors, and preservation before deciding what a coin is worth. And remember, coin hunting is not only about finding a quarter worth thousands of dollars. Sometimes the real value is in learning how to identify what you have, understanding its history, and knowing when an ordinary-looking coin deserves a closer inspection. Our fourth coin, the 1985 D Washington quarter in very fine condition, is therefore a great example of the difference between a common circulated coin and a rare high-grade specimen. Keep watching, because we are now approaching the fifth and final Washington quarter, where another date, mint mark combination, and condition will complete our top 5 collection. Now we have reached the fifth and final coin in our Washington quarter collection, and this one is the 1970 Washington quarter with no mint mark in circulated good condition. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary quarter, but the 1970 issue has an interesting place in American coinage history. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and because Philadelphia did not use a mint mark on this issue, the absence of a mint mark is completely normal. It is not, by itself, an error. PCGS lists the 1970 Philadelphia quarter as a regular strike issue with a mintage of 136,420,000 coins. The 1970 Washington quarter belongs to the modern clad era. Unlike Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier, this coin does not contain 90% silver. It has a copper-nickel outer layer over a pure copper center, weighs approximately 5.67 grams, and measures about 24.3 millimeters in diameter. Our example is described as being in good condition, meaning it has experienced considerable circulation over the decades. Washington's portrait is still recognizable, but the highest points of the design will show substantial wear. The reverse eagle and lettering remain identifiable, although much of the finer detail may be weak or worn away. For an ordinary circulated 1970 no mint mark quarter in good condition, the realistic value is generally around face value to perhaps 50 cents, depending on the exact appearance and buyer demand. Current market references indicate that worn 1970 Philadelphia quarters are generally inexpensive, while the major premiums occur in exceptional uncirculated grades. But this is where the story becomes much more exciting. Although our good condition example is not normally a high-dollar coin, the same 1970 issue can become considerably more valuable when it survives in exceptional condition. PCGS records an auction record of $2,160 for a 1970 Washington quarter graded MS-67+, sold by Heritage Auctions in June 2019. That auction result is a perfect example of why collectors must never confuse a circulated good condition coin with a spectacular mint state specimen. A worn quarter may be worth only a small amount over face value, while an exceptionally preserved example can attract serious collector competition. PCGS describes the 1970 Philadelphia issue as fairly common through approximately MS-66, but notes that MS-67 examples are much scarcer and that MS-68 or higher examples are extremely difficult to obtain. This means that the real rarity of this date is concentrated at the very highest grades rather than in ordinary circulated condition. There is another fascinating reason collectors sometimes pay close attention to 1970 quarters: mint errors and varieties. A normal 1970 Philadelphia quarter is common, but a genuine mint-made error can be a completely different collectible. Collectors may search for unusual striking characteristics, double dies, off-center strikes, planchet problems, or other authenticated errors. However, ordinary scratches, dents, damage, or discoloration caused after the coin left the mint should not automatically be called errors. This is especially important because online videos and marketplace listings sometimes show ordinary 1970 quarters with enormous price claims. Always remember that an auction record for a spectacular certified coin does not mean every 1970 quarter has the same value. The exact coin, grade, variety, certification, and auction circumstances determine the actual selling price. The absence of the mint mark is also something collectors should understand. Philadelphia quarters from this period normally had no mint mark, so finding a 1970 quarter without a letter is expected. The missing mint mark does not automatically make this coin rare. The real question is whether the coin has an unusual variety, genuine mint error, or exceptionally high grade. If you have a 1970 Washington quarter, take a close look at both sides. Examine the date, Washington's portrait, the lettering, the eagle, and the overall surfaces. If the coin appears unusually sharp and almost untouched, it may deserve closer examination. If you suspect an error, compare it with authenticated examples before believing a high-dollar claim. And just like every other coin in this video, never clean your 1970 quarter. Do not polish it, scratch it, scrape it, or use chemicals to make it look newer. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surfaces and may significantly reduce collector appeal. So, for our 1970 Washington quarter with no mint mark in circulated good condition, a realistic value is generally about 25 cents to 50 cents for an ordinary example, rather than thousands of dollars. But the documented $2,160 auction record for an MS-67 Plus specimen shows that exceptional preservation can create a dramatically different market result. And that brings us to the end of our 5-coin journey. We have looked at the 1966 no mint mark quarter in extra fine condition, the 1979 D in very fine condition, the 1967 no mint mark quarter in good condition, the 1985 D in very fine condition, and finally the 1970 no mint mark quarter in circulated good condition. The biggest lesson from these 5 coins is simple. Never judge a Washington quarter only by its age or by a sensational price you see online. Date, mint mark, variety, condition, preservation, authentication, and real auction history all matter. So before you spend an old Washington quarter, take a few seconds to inspect it. Look at the date, check the mint mark, examine the condition, and search for genuine varieties or errors. You might not find a fortune every time, but you may discover an interesting piece of American coinage history. If you enjoyed this rare coin journey, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more United States coin values, rare varieties, mint marks, error coins, and auction discoveries. Thanks for watching. Keep searching, keep collecting, and remember, the next valuable coin could be hiding in your pocket change.